My name is Frank Furedi. I'm an emeritus professor of sociology at the University of Kent. At the moment, I'm primarily involved in giving public engagements and speeches in Europe, particularly in Italy, Holland, Belgium, and East Europe, where I've been lecturing in different universities. I'm a sociologist by trade, mainly interested in historical sociology. But in more recent years, I've been drawn towards both philosophy and history a little bit more. And I see my work as being primarily in the domain of what I would loosely call cultural and moral history and moral sociology. I'm involved in a long-term project involving three different sort of works, which looks at, from an Enlightenment point of view, the history of freedom, of authority, and then of moral autonomy. These are the three areas that I'm particularly interested in. And the way that I'm developing my ideas is trying to develop a theoretical framework that sort of brings together and intertwines the intellectual heritage of the Enlightenment, particularly in the philosophical domain. But I'm also interested in some of the classical sociological theories of the 19th century, of the contributions of people like Marx and Durkheim in particular, also a little bit of Weber. And I've been very much influenced more laterally by the works of Hannah Arendt, whose work I really love, and I'm trying to sort of internalize and find a new way of expressing some of her, I think, very important sort of ideals. At the moment, what I'm really working on in particular is on the question of populism. I think populism I find particularly fascinating. And I'm interested in it not just simply sociologically as an intellectual, but also politically. I think I'm one of the few academics that wholeheartedly supports what I call the populist moment. And I see myself as trying to develop a liberal version, clearly liberal and systematically democratic version of what a populist outlook ought to look like in the 21st century. Well, I was never going to write a book on populism. That was not what I was interested in. I was doing a study of democracy, and I was still back in Roman times, just left Greece as I was moving along, when all the debates around Brexit and populism began to break out. And I decided to write a book called Populism and the Culture War in Europe, mainly because I was quite disturbed by the fact that there were very few attempts to provide a balanced picture of what populism was all about. The term populism became this all-encompassing term that essentially deprecated and devalued what I felt the people were trying to do, and turned populism into almost like a swear word. Whereas historically, populism has got a very respectable history. There used to be a time when people on the left, identified with populism, and it was seen as an expression of popular sovereignty, of the aspirations of the people. Whereas now, if you look at most of the literature, it's seen as a kind of synonymous with the far right, as an extremist, xenophobic, racist kind of phenomenon. So I became, I really felt it was very important to provide a balance to that. I was also really interested in Brexit because of my own background. I'm thinking about as European as you can be. I was born in Hungary. I live a lot of my life in Italy, in Lombardy. I spend a lot of time here in England, and I genuinely feel I speak a lot of European languages. I feel I'm genuinely European. And I was very disturbed by the way in which the anti-Brexit propaganda attempted to portray people who were for Brexit, like myself, as inherently anti-European. They couldn't understand the distinction between not liking the European Union, the institution of the European, as opposed to not liking Europe, because myself and a lot of people, for example, I know Gisela Stewart quite well, the Labour MP, former Labour MP in Birmingham. We're all passionately European. It just so happens that we think that the European Union is an inherently democratic institution and basically usurps the popular will of society. So I felt it was, these were like important reasons as to why one should get engaged with this. And finally, because I'm Hungarian, I also felt I had to balance out some of the criticisms that are directed at Hungary, where there seems to be a double standard. For example, you have a situation today where you have demonstrators in Paris where people are literally killed and shot at, And that's seen as really cool and as being all right. But when you have demonstrations in Hungary where nobody gets killed, police just allowed, that's denounced as being the deeds of an authoritarian state. So I felt I needed to explain why Hungarians took their national sovereignty seriously. And in particular, I think what I've tried to do was to explain how national sovereignty is not inherently a right-wing ideal, but has got very important positive connotations, as it had from the very beginning, when it was during the French Revolution that the idea of the people and the nation first really kicked in a very kind of positive, transformative direction. So there was a lot of things in the air that made me want to write this book. And even though it wasn't something I wanted to do, I just took a half a year off to write it. And given the reaction that I'm really glad I did.